for A Small World, and I am joined here today by Christoph Holz, who is not only a computer scientist but also a rocket scientist, and he is an expert in many things, including data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, social media, perception. The list goes on and on. Welcome, Christoph.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Thank you for having me. Hello.
Thank you. So before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that Christoph has shared all of his various topics and questions with us in advance. And we are going to launch a poll right now so that you can engage with him and let him know which questions you would like to have answered first. So if you see a topic there that really appeals to you, please make sure that you vote for it. And then we will go in order of popularity, I guess. So we'll take 1 or 2 minutes for everyone to vote for their favorite topics. Good, I can see that you're seeing the questions now. Wonderful. Good, I'm seeing some movement there, Christoph.
Wonderful.
Excellent. We're at 33% voted now. Just waiting for a couple more. Excellent. So while we wait for that, we'll just give it a minute or two. But Christoph, please tell us a bit more about yourself. Where are you tuning in from today? What is your background and what are you going to be talking about today?
Yeah, as you mentioned before, I'm a computer scientist and I still found a wife. And not only that, she's a medic, intensive care medic. So if I have some medical issues, she always tells me, don't be so whiny.
Fantastic. So has your wife been working on the front lines during this time?
Yes. This actually gives me quite some insights. And since she's an intensive care medic, anesthesiologist, so at night, if I get cozy, a small sting and I sleep the whole night.
Wow. And then you just wake up the next day and you don't know what happened. That's really good.
Wonderful.
She can use her career to her advantage.
Yeah. I still have 2 children, so don't get too worried. And since our governments seem to think that you can homeschool your children while you work at home, that only I think can do by governments officials who don't have their own children or the children that are old enough. So you not really know what's more problematic, the pandemic or the children.
It's difficult, I can imagine. I don't have children, but I imagine it's a very difficult challenge to balance all of them at the same time. But hats off to you, and obviously you've taken time out of your day to talk to us today. What topics are you going to be covering, or what's the overall overarching theme?
So I became a speaker because I was really astonished how the perception of digitalization, of the internet, of social media changed during the time. We had such a cool technology, and then suddenly, if you ask me who's responsible for voting in America for Brexit, for example, which challenged us in Europe, we are responsible too for that. And we did develop the tools like Cambridge Analytica, like Facebook, like Twitter, and we did not talk about it. We allowed democracy to run into an open knife. And on the other hand, people would not want to talk to us. It's like IT nerds like me, who without a communication deficit would be able to put so much time in front of a computer. So there really is a communication deficit, and my colleagues and me, we did not, the responsibility is only catching up to us, but we were not prepared for that. The future is not created anymore. The future is programmed, and societies are programmed right now. And that's for now not a really democratic process, and it has to be understood. And today it's interesting because digitalization, home office, video conferences, talks like this. Now digitalization is popular. It's at least more popular than the pandemic, and perception changes, and we have to create, I think, Since I have children, I have to be a part in creating a better future for them. And this means we have to look on the opportunities. If we don't look at opportunities, we cannot create a good future.
That's very interesting. I find that absolutely fascinating, and you're right. I think there's a lot of people who have been involved in the creation of the internet and computers and coding and all of that, and a lot of that comes with that comes with a great level of responsibility, not just for now but also for the future, and also finding a way to translate what is happening and what is possible in a way that laymen like myself can understand, not just the dangers and the risks, but also the potential for innovation. That's amazing. So you work in this area and you're an expert.
Thank you. So
well,
how are the questions?
So the questions, we've got 74 out of 99 who have voted. Shall we close the poll?
I think so, yes.
Get started. Okay, perfect. So at this moment in time, I can see that we have a very popular question by far, and this is economy without companies. Please tell us, how will COVID-19 transform how we do business in the future?
Yes, and companies, it's an interesting thing. Companies we know for now came into existence about 150 years ago. And they have been invented, the liabilities laws in the US, in France, in Great Britain. So, but they became so big as they are now because there was no internet at this time. But now, actually, we have an internet. So how is that going to transform us, and how is the pandemic going to transform us? And as you can see here, this is a graph from a study from 2014 in the US, and it depicts the number of employees in an average number of employees in a US company. This is 18, which is quite a low number. And for the last 150 years, companies have been growing employment-wise. And we have a peak in employment in companies, in average employment, which went down. This is the new economy bubble, and this over there is the subprime crisis. So you don't need to be a fortune teller to expect that the same drop is going to happen after this crisis, after this pandemic. And the question is, why? Average companies, 18 employees, they don't change so much. It's the big companies who get in trouble because, of course, all companies might have to let go people in a crisis like this. And the good people are searching for new jobs. So if they rehire, the companies with 18 employees are usually getting back the same employees. And if the boss says, I'm going to hire you back, you trust him. But in a big company, you suddenly realize, I'm not this important. I search for a new job. So big companies are getting back employees, but not the same. So they lose a lot of capital, social capital. They have to retrain them afterwards. And now we see that digitalization makes it possible to have a really small company, because a really small company like, let's take Minecraft, yeah, the computer game. Actually, when Microsoft bought it for, I think, $400 million, it still had only one employee who was self-employed. And who wants to pursue a career if they could start up, if they could be self-employed? So that's a big change that it is coming. And the question is this a problem? We won't run out of work. We did not run out of work here. We did not run out of work here, and we will not run out of work. But we might take more responsibility for what we are doing, since a big company is prone to automation, of course. In an industrial system, you can only grow big if you do more of the same. And if you do more of the same, this can more easily be automated. Of course, some jobs will be replaced by others. Bad jobs will be replaced by good jobs. How can you identify a bad job? If you can digitize it. That has been a bad job all along. So underneath this process, yeah, and you see it with startups as well. Startups are not meant to have a lot of employees, and they remove incumbents, which had a lot of employees. Startups are not focused on getting more employees, but the underlying phenomenon is that for thousands of years, we used markets to organize our work, and only a few hundred years ago we used companies, firms to organize our work. And these two forces are actually two competing ways how we organize work. And now, since markets can be automated, since you can reach have a global reach without a big company, this of course makes the market stronger, and this means that smaller companies have an advantage, because almost every employee in a small company has experience with the market. And the market is important now. In a big company, you have internal markets, you have a lot of things, internal policies. So actually what's happening is that size does not matter anymore. It's not an advantage. It's not a disadvantage. Yeah, if it's not an advantage, of course, the disadvantages take over. And if you work in a big company, you know company policy. You have to fight to keep your job. You have to fight to get up in the hierarchy. This energy is lost for the company. A small company does not lose this energy. So this is an interesting transformation which puts us into an entrepreneurial society, which has been predicted for several decades. And entrepreneurship, of course, is the only thing besides creativity, besides responsibility, which you cannot digitize. Yeah, so did you ever have your own company, Nadine?
That's amazing. Yes, well, I'm not my own company, but definitely I have worked as an entrepreneur various times throughout my career.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that not just social media, but just the internet as a whole has kind of leveled the playing field for everybody. And now anybody can become somebody, just like anybody can run their own company. And it's very exciting. Hopefully we'll see a lot more businesses pop up now.
I believe that these are really exciting times. And of course, it's more responsibility for one person. But on the other hand, what can be nicer, what can be more engaging than to really live for your own ideas, put them into reality, and maybe you fail, but failure is not the end. It's a learning opportunity. And now we have a society which recognizes failures as learning opportunities, and this will change, of course. This will change the role of the investor, which I am one of them as well.
Amazing.
So, should we look at the next question?
Yes, let's go ahead. So, a small world, actually quite topical, and other social networks. Can you tell us, why are there still cities even though we have smartphones now?
Yeah, I suppose that's a funny question, isn't it? This is actually where I was born. This is Kitzbühel in the Alps. It's hosting the most important skiing race of the world. At least that's what we claim. And if you have been born in a small city, you know that everyone knows everyone. Yeah, it's a village is a very small social network, and if a village as a social network goes into cyberspace, into the virtual world, it's not one social network anymore, because every one of us, two persons, bring both their social networks. So it's two of them, and if you connect them by one person, Nadine, your network, my network, we could facilitate that, and that creates much more power out of these social networks. So what then actually is a city? A city is an infrastructure, of course. It's an infrastructure for social networks. Actually, cities are infrastructures for the social network of your family, of your co-employees, of your club, of your friends, and a lot of other things that exist on top of each other. And that's what makes the city more productive than just a simple village. And it's a very interesting thing. If you look, if you double the size of residents in a city, okay, that's a really big city now, but if you double the size, if you double the residents, the number of residents, do you need to double the length of the streets, the canal system? No. It's very interesting that you only need 85% more streets, because the main street, if you have one city and another city, you put them on top of each other, you still have the main street, which will be frequented more, and you might in the end get congestion, traffic jams, but that's not the, then you have to do something. But a bigger city does only need 85, double the size city, does only need 85% more electricity lines, 85% more telecommunication connections. So actually, if you double the size of a city, it gets 15% cheaper per inhabitant. That's an industrial concept of a city. Then there's one more thing, creativity. Like in a city that is double this big, you have 15% more patents per inhabitant. You have an average income 15% more than in a city that is half this big. You have 15% more lawyers per inhabitants, and of course you have 15% more crime. Not that lawyers and crimes are, but so you get the message. It's even more productive. So it's cheaper to run, but it's more productive than a smaller city. Why is that? Because if you stack double as much social networks on top of each other, you get an explosion, a combinatorial explosion of networks. That creates this additional productivity, at least in the industrial age. But I believe now, most of you don't live in the city center. Most of us live outside. And in the pandemic, we learned we don't need to go to the city all the time. We can do a lot from at home. So, and if the city is an infrastructure for powerful social networks, this one is an infrastructure for powerful social networks as well. And it allows me, in the city, I have only access to the networks that are there. But this device allows me to take it into the suburb. It allows me, if I'm part of a small world, to travel and take my city with me and all my connections that I need. Because cities now, in the digital age, are not enough. Otherwise, we would not need to travel between all these cities. And I think digitalization, or the pandemic, has taught us we can stay at home. That's okay, but we can work wherever we are, and it's still very, very productive. So I think while the industrial revolution brought us bigger cities, and they're still growing, and they will be growing for decades, but there is this different movement which says, in the end, we are going to live quite distributed, because we can provide the same infrastructure of a city now with digital means. Nadine, do you live on the countryside?
I do, actually, yes.
Yeah.
Funny enough, yeah. My only requisite was that I have a fast internet connection.
Yes.
But I can live anywhere. I don't even have to live in the UK, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So my secretary, my assistant, for example, she's now in Sri Lanka. It works fine, yeah. And she has the night to do things. And I usually don't know where she is. Yeah, it really works well.
Amazing. So how do you deal with different time zones then?
Yeah, she does the things while I'm sleeping, and in the morning it's ready. What better could I want?
Almost like baking a bread. Wonderful. Good. Are you ready for the next question?
Yes.
Okay, let's have a look. This one's actually very interesting. Christoph, what happens if you combine a Tesla with a surgical robot?
Yeah. What's going to be the future of our medicine? So this actually is a very old thing. That's a mobile hospital. You'll find them in war zones, let's say in Afghanistan, in Iran, Iraq at least in the war times. And they're mobile, they're on a truck. So that's a very old idea. And they're getting smaller and smaller. So there won't be really big issues. And this is Da Vinci. That's a surgical robot. It is a very old surgical robot. 15 years ago, my wife already worked with something like this. It, of course, has to be steered by someone. Someone has to control it, a surgeon, and he can do longer operations because he can sit upright and he has not this strain on his muscles and everything. So this works really well. And of course, this is getting smaller as well, and it will someday be autonomous. Maybe not for complex surgical, but let's say the appendix. It should be able in a few years to do it automatically. And then we have this. We have autonomous cars already. This is in Vienna, but all towns, a lot of towns in Britain, in the US, you'll find these small buses in use. They are already testing them. You saw this person. So this is a self-driving car, and what you saw as the driver, because the thing can recognize traffic lights. But if you have a box of beer laying on the street, the driver has to remove it. This silly thing cannot drive around it. So, but it's getting better, and this is enough room to carry such an operation device. And now let's start a mind experiment. What would you prefer if you had to have your, Nadine, do you still have your appendix?
I would hope so.
Okay, so maybe it has to go someday, yeah, and then you can choose. Do I have to travel to London, let's say, far away from my family and get an operation, and they of course, want to keep me there, although it's just a simple operation? Or would you prefer to have it done by a family doctor? And now it's a little strange. You meet them for the operation on his parking lot, because this autonomous mobile hospital surgeon operating room has arrived overnight. Your family doctor is joining you. He is at your side. The operation might take 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. You're going to be sedated. Afterwards, if you're all okay, the family doctor leaves the car, and this hospital is going to drive you home. And there, a medical robot, a service robot will take you into your living room, put you in your bed, and it'll stay for the next 3 or 5 days. Will take care of you if there's an emergency, and no problem with that. And then, of course, he has to leave. His OP is far away, so he has to use public transport to catch up. The robot has to use public transport to catch up with his operation car. Nadine, if let's say if we take risk out of the equation, these things have to prove to be safe. Yeah, of course. And if we take the money out of the equation, because this is going to be much, much cheaper than keeping up a hospital. I believe there could be surgical cars like this for every specific operation. So they are trained for this. They are going to be very clean. In this operation room, you're not going to meet someone who could infect you. You don't have any other patients there. But if we keep all of that out of the question, it's just a question of convenience. So if it was not expensive or if it was safe, would you still want to go to an hospital?
Interesting question. I'd like to think that I'd be enough of an early adopter to give it a try, but I'm a little bit hesitant still.
Yeah. And I believe that's the right opinion. I think we won't be the first to use that, and it has to be tried in a good environment. It takes years until we really believe it can remove the appendix without any problems. And of course, a few years after that, no surgeon will be as good as this robot for this very specific thing. For other things, we still need other specialists, and we still are going to need hospitals. But since we see that hospitals are removed from our vicinities, they are centralized, which is an industrial idea. So something has to come to us, and I believe this could work out.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think probably in the longer term it would work out. It's very innovative, I'd have to say.
Okay, so let's look at the next question.
Just before we continue, would you Are you open to the idea of having open heart surgery by a robot?
Yeah, so about open heart surgery, no. I still want to have my wife close by to do that, but who knows?
Who knows?
There might come a time where it's much cheaper and where open heart surgery is available for everyone because it's so cheap, but if it has to be done by a machine.
Amazing. Yeah, they probably last a lot longer. Right, so let's see, what's the next question? Economic versus viral growth. If humanity itself was a pandemic, would it have the same limits than COVID-19? Interesting question.
Yeah, so I believe we are all quite familiar with exponential growth now. I have brought an example for you. Hour 1, you have the first infection. And after that, it's a concrete example. After 8 hours, you had 100 infected. After 16 hours, you have 10,000 people infected. And after 1 day, 1 million. What is that? I think you all were part of it. It's the dress. Do you remember it? The thing that you had to think about, is it white and golden? Is it blue and black? And it was an experience over social media. It infected almost everyone. Now let's look closely. Usually if you have a viral system on social media, you have a fixed number of people you can contact, which is maybe 3 billion people on Instagram, Facebook, and so on. So you have a limited number that you can reach. And in the beginning, you see no one knows about this. Yeah, and then it starts, and we all have been part of things like the dress. And then all can be infected, all can be informed about this new thing. And then it goes down, everyone knows about it. And then in the end, you cannot infect anyone more. We all are some kind of resistant against it. On the other side, we see in the beginning, you have no one informed or infected with this viral thing, and then it goes up until it reaches its limit. So this is an S-curve. It's an exponential S-curve, but there is a fixed limit that you can reach. And COVID-19 has a fixed limit as well, 7 billion people, that's the maximum. And if it reaches them fast enough, and it kills too much, of course, but then at least for a little time, we would be resistant as well. And that's why we have this flatten the curve idea going around. If you remember it, we need to keep the infections slow so that our medical system can manage that. And actually, if we talk about viral marketing is not a metaphor. Viral marketing is really viral because we use the mathematics to understand social media that actually comes from pandemics. Yeah, it comes from sociology, it comes from pandemics, and we introduced a lot of mathematical ideas back into the system. And now the interesting question, that's humanity, 7 billion people, we almost grew exponentially. And in the beginning, this growth was very, very slow. And now every biologist, if you tell them what does this curve mean, he'd say that is an outbreak. And you might know the story where one planet says to the other, I have humans. And the other planet says, oh, that goes away. So are we going away? Is this growth even sustainable, and where did it come from? Our story is different than the virus, because why didn't we grow? Like we were in ancient times, we were about 500 million, and in end of Middle Ages, we were 540 million people on Earth, give or take. So, but we had inventions like the plow. The plow allowed more calories per square meter. We could feed more children, so we had more children. We literally ate up the innovation. The innovation could not provide more energy that we would consume by growth. And then what changed? The steam engine. suddenly the steam engine produced more energy that we literally could eat up. It allowed us to produce more calories that we ever could eat up. And as astounding it might be, there is no natural hunger anymore in the world. In 2014, 1 million people starved, and every one of them is too much. But this was not natural hunger, this was politically. If you have hunger now and starvation, it's only a decision of some political entity, like in Syria, not to provide the food. But we have enough energy to produce enough food, and if you see how much we throw away, which is not an easy problem to solve, but there is actually enough food. And since this overflow of energy, that's what created modern society, that allowed us to have an industrial age, that was allowed us to have to think about the future, but because this made the future being better from the parents to the sons. And the question is, can you keep up exponential growth forever? And biologists would say no. And physicists might say maybe, and mathematicians say, of course, if you have infinite time, you can grow infinitely. The question just is, can we bend this curve? This is technological innovation. And if technological innovation keeps up, then there is no limit of growth in sight. Growth limits are only in the mind. For example, per hour, more energy reaches us from the sun on the whole earth that we could not use the whole year. It's just about how to harness these powers. But on the other hand, we have a flattening the curve as well. So just a second, that's it. We are going to flatten the curve. You know, China, I've been in China in November. Since I'm back, I'm well again. So don't tell anyone. We are in China. They had the one child per family policy, and they abolished that. And still, this society does not grow anymore. It's easy to understand if you know that in Beijing you have to pay for a substandard flat about $3,000 per month. A place in the kindergarten in Singapore, not Hong Kong, no, not Beijing, in this high booming Chinese towns, it's $30,000 per year. So they replaced the one per child policy by living costs. So you simply cannot afford, in a developed society, you simply cannot afford to have more than maybe one, maybe two children. So that's why we are flattening the curve. But innovation that produces all the calories and the rest calories we can use to grow our society and make it better, that's going to be a lot more than we really need. And I believe we have to solve a lot problems, and problems solving mostly is in connection with energy. So this is an interesting and completely different thing than a virus outbreak. What do you think about this future, Nadine?
Well, I think the future is hopeful. Hopefully people, if they take away the right learnings from all these experiences, I think in all honesty, I'm still in shock with regards to hunger. You know, I truly believe that no one should go hungry in this day.
No one should. No one should. And it's our decision. It's a political decision right now. We have to take. We have the technology to solve it. Why shouldn't we?
Exactly. Why shouldn't we? Maybe we need to start writing some letters to our local MPs. Okay, moving on. Something a little bit more optimistic, shall we say? Tell me, please, about health digitalization. How to digitally prevent the next pandemic and calculate vaccines in no time.
Yeah, and I'm going to start with a little shock. I'm going to show an X-ray of my hand, and here you can see a chip. I have it here. in the hand. Bill Gates forced me to implant this chip. No, he did not. This was an impulse decision on the CeBIT, on the trade fair. I only had 2 hours left to catch the train. If I would have slept one night over this, I would not have done it. But then I asked this piercer, I said to him, is it going to sting? And he said, no, maximum a bee sting. And I forgot my last bee sting. So I know it again now. And he really puts, here you can see, I hope you're not afraid of needles, but you can see the needle here. It has 2 millimeter in diameter, and if he sticks it in, you really feel the skin resistance. And then I had this adrenaline shock, adrenaline rush. Now I know why piercing is so addictive. I believe I need some more piercings now. But, yeah. This chip, I can already use it in most hotels. If I go close to the door, it gives a red light because the number is not coded. And in the future, I expect I'll send my number to the reception, virus-free, and then I can just walk up to my room and open it up. For me, it was a question how to find out what is that doing for me. I have passwords on it. I have Bitcoin wallets, what the cyborg of today just needs. So it's all there, and I wanted to find it out. And I asked my wife, I said, Schatzi, what do you think about this? And she said, are you crazy? Fiddling around with your body. Yeah, it's who is going to put it out? I said, you, of course. If you think this is crazy, I'm going to show you the smallest computer in Europe, and I hope this shocks no one. It's small size of a coin. It's for small children. Through a cut in the skin of the head, it's moved over the skull and then connected. You can see the connections right here with wires to the brain. Thousands of operations already done. Nadine, any idea what this might be?
No, I've got no idea. Is it some kind of...
You saw people like this already. It's a so-called cochlear implant. What you see outside here is only the battery, which puts the energy in and the sound information, the microphone. But the rest is inside the body. It's a real computer, and it allows people, deaf people who cannot speak, children, babies, to learn to hear and to learn to speak. Wow. That's the thing about the digitalization. I started it as a horror story, and I really hope I shocked no one. It seemed to be a horror story, but suddenly it makes sense. Sometimes it's digitization, it's the other way around. It starts benign, and then in the end it becomes a horror story. So both of this is possible, and to tell you how pandemics can, in the future, the main problem with the pandemic is not the disease itself. It's fast spreading because you cannot test everyone. That's a chip on a USB-sized chip that has the testing on board. And it can test 1 DNA sample per 3 hours. And in the future, it will be able to do 10,000 tests per second. And my next tooth implant might already have this. And if it finds a viral pattern, which it does not recognize, it would simply connect via Bluetooth. Now we know why I call it Bluetooth. Via Bluetooth to a database, find out, is this pattern dangerous? If it is, I'm able to contact my insurance company, tell them, say, and they are going to pay me a lot of money. They are going to pay me a premium for me staying at home, self-quarantine myself, because this is much cheaper than what happened right now. And this all can keep our privacy, and all can be willingly, because, of course, if you're not willing to get an implant, if your watch tells you your temperature is too high, you're going to have a DNA sampler like a fiber thermometer at home, and can rather easily use it.
Yeah, I think probably the scariest part is the incision, or the actual putting it into something, because there's a lot of different technologies and tools that we use that are somewhat external, but I guess as time goes by, we just adopt new ones.
Actually, these chips are rather permanent. You see them all the time. Pets, a lot of pets already have these chips. So I wanted to get eye to eye with my dog.
Fantastic. So I'm curious, how has it benefited you? Didn't you have any reservations or fears with regards to who can access the information on the chip?
Actually, it's the safest place, because you need to be very close and use a lot of energy, and you need to have a password. If you lose an USB stick, if you lose your card, you don't recognize it for days. If I lose my hand, I'm recognizing it instantly.
We would hope so. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you very much, Christoph. I think we should go to one last question, and then we should flip over to the Q&A section. What do you think?
Yes. Perfect.
I'm quite curious about this question. It says, it talks about digital surveillance. If digital surveillance works, why would we still need a Corona app? I guess there's a lot of controversy now about the tracking apps.
Yes, isn't there? It's really it's really a big topic, and it makes a lot of it creates a lot of confusion, I have to admit. And we all learned that surveillance is flawless. Digital surveillance is everywhere, and we are completely surveilled, and nothing, we can keep nothing from the others. So it's true, there is a form of complete surveillance, which if you live in a small village, you know, it's called not surveillance, it's called coveillance. Everyone is watching everyone, so that's really mass surveillance. But conventional surveillance, you need a suspect. And conventional surveillance is as old as the state, as old as force, as old as power is. Thousands of years, you picked out people who were suspicious and you surveilled them. But digital surveillance seems to be different. Obviously, everyone is suspect. We collect the data of everyone, and we claim, governments claim, they are able to find terrorists through this means. And this is rather difficult. It's a rather I have to show this computer. That's the most powerful computer in the world. And for example, if you had all this data of social networks, all telecommunication data, people connecting to other people, and you want to find out a terror cell, a terror group, you'd need their communication patterns. And to find a terror group there actually is one of the unsolved problems of computer science. If you look at the Millennium Foundation, if you would be able to solve this information problem, then you'd get $1 million. So that's one reason why we know this problem seems not to be have solved. It would really change our perception of the universe if it had, because it's so difficult to find a needle in a haystack of data, in a haystack of haystacks. So it's not only the problem that we produce a lot of data, and we produce much more data than we transport over our lines. We transport much more data than we store, and we store much more data than we are even able to analyze. A company called IDC said only 5% of all the data is analyzed. So it's actually not feasible that mass surveillance really is working. They find sometimes things, and if they do it on focus like conventional surveillance, of course, and that's okay, I believe, to do that. But the real mass surveillance is simply not feasible. You cannot solve this computer problem. The question is, why doesn't the NSA use this as an excuse? Why don't they say, oh, guys, don't fear surveillance, we can't do it anyway?
No idea why.
The question comes with religion. Why are we good? Why are we behaving good if no one is watching? Why is that? Because God is watching, the invisible observer. And Nietzsche said God is dead. Yeah, but that's not a problem. We now have the NSA and in Germany the Bundestrojaner and a lot of other surveillance techniques. But in the end, it's the same if a radar box is working even if you don't switch it on. The existence of the radar box changes the society. In China, this is very strong. It makes normative behaviors. In DDR, it has been very strong. It norms our behavior. But technologically, that what is claimed, this total mass surveillance to find terror cells and things like this, it's the so-called click problem. That's not a solvable, practical solvable problem in informatics. So it's more a disciplinary idea, mass surveillance.
Interesting. It's quite, I was thinking recently actually in relation to this particular question, how we all have a fear of being surveilled, yet we give so much information for free, right? Yes. We're technically programming the internet with our everyday behavior.
Yes, and that's the best way to do it, to overflow all the systems. So no surveillance has any chance to really keep up with this data tsunami. It simply cannot be processed by the capacities that we have.
Okay, unless, what if we program artificial intelligence to be able to decipher the information available on the internet?
It's already done. And of course, if someone says, I'm going to, or I should not even say that, there was this couple who said they're going to the US and they're going to destroy America. They said this over Twitter and it really was a fun. And they had to fly back from Newark, from the airport, they were sent back. So of course you find silly people. But everyone who knows only a little about the things, and the Islamic State, for example, they are very high developed in these things. Anyone who knows only a little about this can avoid all measures to be tracked.
Wow. Okay. So
actually, this is a kind of freedom. It's a freedom by overflow.
Okay, so I don't actually have a Facebook or an Instagram account, but I might just create one just to overflow the system with a terrible amount of noise. Amazing. Thank you so much, Christoph. So, right, that's the end of the topics that you pre-prepared for us. But now I'm going to have a look at the Q&A section. I can see there are 7 questions waiting for us so far. Right. Let's check the votes. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to click on this button that says answer live, and the question is from Carlos Reyes. Can you see the question?
Yes.
Perfect.
Do you want to read it?
I can do. Carlos Reyes says, hi, Christoph. Can you explain more your idea about economy without money?
Yes. So the question would be, I keep it short, why Jean-Luc Picard, the captain of the Enterprise, why doesn't he have a wallet? It's rather simple. His suit, like mine, it's just too tight. Yeah, it would not fit, but he don't need any money. There are already markets without money, which are really working well without money. It comes to mind.
Oh, is that a question? Are there?
But I suppose it's quite difficult to answer, because a market is where you have requests and you have offerings, and the market matches them. And that, for example, is done for organ transplants. And this might sound a little crazy, but it's really like if you have a donation organ and you have someone who needs it, you could not use money to match in this market, except in China maybe. But if you use data like the age of the person, the DNA, the blood type, and the how urgency and all these things, then you can match the data, and then you find a perfect fit. And since Nadine already mentioned artificial intelligence, in data-rich markets, you can find the product match in your market with the support of artificial intelligence. And then the price, you know, you have so many data points, and the price is only one data point of many data points. So the price in comparison to the others, the money, is going to decline.
Interesting. So does that mean like an exchange of services, like for like?
Yes.
Or a skill exchange,
Yes.
skill swapping,
Yes.
I think is a thing as well.
Yes. Yes, they will really match. It's another example is, can anyone tell me if you have a dating website, what you're paying per month?
Anyone?
Okay, that was a trick question. But dating is like you give your age and your interest and all the data, and then are you matched? No, no, you're not matched. The people who would not fit ever, they are kept from each other, but still data is used for the matching, and the rest, of course, is still chemistry and sweat, and you know what I'm talking about. But these are early developments of markets where you don't need money.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let's see. What's the next question? Victoria, Christoph. Where do you see the future of education and learning? Any edtech startups that have impressed you, since you are, like us, also trying to homeschool your kids? Thank you.
Yeah. I cannot talk about specific products, but it is, if I see my son, how familiar he is with Siri. Is he really getting the experience of writing, the training of writing he needs, if the technology makes it this easy for him? So there are a lot of drawbacks if the mind is not really fully developed. On the other hand, we know that learning is done 92% or 98% of learning is done on your own. Your teacher just looks that you're really doing something and he's there for questions. And the older you get, the more you need to learn on yourself. And of course, it has to be done all the time. And I think learning will be, since our attention span is decreasing, I believe learning will become more like a computer game, which might sound crazy now, but teaching has this problem that computer games, they really rise your dopamine level. Yeah, that's really engaging. And then you sit in class and then you have a teacher, and that's really the problem with teaching. And teachers are really trying to do a good job, but this is really a hard job. So I believe there will be a lot of tools that help children in game-like situations to learn on their own, in their own tempo, in their own learning capabilities. And I know in Atlanta there's an interesting project. A substandard school went over the top because they increased the class size to 100, and they had 5 teachers, and everyone had a PC. So this can only be done with older children. I don't think small children should have all this equipment. But overnight, the new questions were created, and everyone got their own course, which was fitting to their own interest. And you had the teacher just to help you, to coach you. And I believe that's a good idea how to do education in the future.
Wonderful. Well, I think Montessori already follows a similar kind of philosophy.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And what was I going to say? So basically, what do you think about if we combined Netflix, for example, with gamification and different levels of skill sets? Do you think there's a market for a product like that?
Yes, yes. I think there's even QB. I don't know if you know that. It's a streaming service only for the phone, and you can move your screen, and you see it wide angle or you see it vertically, and every series is only 8 minutes. That's the best thing for me. Yeah, that's my attention span, and I think education can be done in this way very well. Yeah, it really grabs you. So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes, I've completely forgotten about Quibi, but yeah, I think it's I think more people need to adopt it at first. It's brand new. I think it's only been launched for a month, maybe 2 months. But yeah, I think it's going to catch on.
I watched it, of course, only because of professional. I need to examine them.
Wonderful. Okay, let's see. Next question. Sundar, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Sundar is asking, what are your views on singularity?
Yes. So the question is, are there going to be robots? Yeah, and are they going to outgrow us? This, for example, is Google City, formerly known as Zurich. So I think some people from Switzerland are watching as well. So Google has bought the most expensive place there to build office buildings for 5,000 employees. That's amazing, and they are hiring all artificial intelligence experts they can get. So if it's going to happen, I don't know. An artificial intelligence that's going to be as clever as a human. But if it happens, 1 year later, it's going to be twice as clever as a human. That's a given. And another month later, it's going to be 5 times. And a few months later, it might be 1,000 times more intelligent than the human being. And I think that's going to solve a lot of problems. But on the other hand, it might be dangerous. I still believe it's a masculine fantasy, singularity. So the takeover and the demise of humanity, because there are hyper-intelligent beings in the universe which don't think about taking power, taking over supremacy. They're called women. Yeah, so it's not a given that a highly intelligent being is going to take over the world. But if it happens, there will be good terminators from Austria. And if this does not work, I have this chip implanted, so they're going to recognize me as one of their own. I'm sorry, Nadine, but I still have one chip, so I could send one to you.
Oh, I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you. Interesting. Hyper intelligent beings. So I'm interested actually in finding out more about whether or not, so yes, computers will be programmed, or artificial intelligence will be programmed to be much smarter than us eventually. But will they be much smarter in the broader sense of the word, or much smarter with a kind of speciality?
Yeah. So we can see, and we already know that you can't outcompete a chess computer. And we learned it's nice to play chess in training to a computer, and it does not take away the challenge of playing to a normal person. So if we combine humanity with this very specific skills, teams of computers and humans outperform computers alone and outperform humans alone. So this combination actually, and artificial intelligence is an invention that we have. And on the other hand, it's a question of the soul. If cognition resides only in the brain, then we already have a computer to prove that it can be done. We just have to replicate the brain. And there's an interesting, the Vatican put out a paper about ethics in artificial intelligence, because there is a challenge. Artificial intelligence is the battleground of religion and has become the battleground of religion and artificial intelligence. And if there is something like a soul, we surely cannot program it. But if it's not, obviously, if we improve enough, then we will be able to have a general intelligence, maybe in 1,000 years, maybe in 100 years, maybe in 10 years. The only question we have to ask ourselves, and that's an ethical question, will it be dangerous? Can we somehow solve this problem? And this is, in my mind, an open question.
Interesting. Well, a lot of developments have happened in the last 20 years alone, so I'd be very excited to see what's going to happen in the next 100 years. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And you're going to be there. I mean, Google is already researching for endless life. Yeah, you just have to pay, then you can live forever.
I think I'd rather do the trip around the moon before I do that.
Yeah, let's do that together. I'm in.
Good. Right, let's see. Anonymous attendee asks, how do you work with your remote assistant currently in Sri Lanka, and what kind of tasks is she doing for you?
Yeah, she does a lot of research. She helps me with my LinkedIn account. I have other assistants closer by. So if I have postal office or things like this, but they're all freelancers. I pay them by the hour, and I have everyone for every task, and they know my perks, my problems, and they ask me what to do next, so they actually manage me.
Interesting. Yeah, upwards management, right?
Yes, yes. No, I'd like to say eye-to-eye management. I had a lot of employees, and I'm really happy that I don't now.
Right. You brought your community all the way from Sri Lanka to you, your work community.
Yes.
Right. Right, let's go on to the next question. Massimo Zilio asks, perfect market needs perfect information and competition in order to choose the right products. How is the internet balancing the two?
Perfect. Hayek, yeah, and he's Austrian economics. It's the idea of the information problem, and that's why Soviet Union would fail, because it could not know enough about the things. The question is, would have the Soviet Union failed because it did not have enough information? They wanted to get rid of money. They did not have enough computing power, which was done by paper and pencil. With a computer right now, could they do it? And I would say no, because the complexity always outgrows the capacity to calculate. So I still believe there never will be perfect information. It's just too difficult to get the perfect information. So now, why did I talk about markets without money? We have some markets where there are moral issues, like the marriage market, like the organ transplant markets. But we, on the other hand, have the problem of getting some information. I tried to buy a coffee machine a while ago, and in the end, I was not able to. Should it have cappuccino? Should it have capsules? Should it have water and this and that and this and that? So I believe in the future, we will have a digital twin who knows us quite well. Yeah, we are, as we learned from Cambridge Analytica, but what we learned from Cambridge Analytica is that we humans are not as sophisticated as we like to think about ourselves. So these solutions without money, they will find products for us who are good enough. They're never going to be perfect. And you never have a global market without money.
Interesting. Okay, right. Moving on to the last question, I think we have answered most of them. There's still a couple more, but we've already gone over time, so I'm not 100% sure at what stage the webinar is going to cut off. But we'll answer one more question, and then if anyone has any further questions, you are welcome to ask Christian in the event page on a Small World website and the app, and you can reach out to him from there. Yeah. Right, so.
Yes. Or connect to me via LinkedIn, via Facebook, via Twitter. No, that was a joke, but just connect on A Small World to me, please.
Oh, your wife is you're gonna be in trouble.
Oh yes, but I'm always am.
Wonderful. Okay, so the final question. Carlos Reis asks, and the limits of the humanity and the limits of the economy to grow, like we have been growing until now in the last longer period of our history. Does that make sense? And it's a tricky question. I'll read it again and I'll put that there for you so you can read it as well. And the limits of the humanity and the limits of the economy to grow, like we have been growing until now in the last longer period of our history. I guess he's referring to your graph from earlier on. Yeah.
So the question would really be, can we grow forever? And the truth is not. What we did in the last several hundred years was actually quite a clever solution. We grew exponentially with the steam engine, and then we grew exponentially with electricity, and this came to an end. So that's this S-curve. And with innovation, other than with evolution, you cannot change the body structure from bone to steel, for example, but you can change the bridge from a wood to a wooden construction. Then you switch to stone, to concrete, you switch to steel, steel wires. So you can change technologies to keep up this exponential growth. So this actually can be done. There's only one drawback. So we are jumping the innovation curves, and in the end, over time, it looks exponentially, while it's only S curves stitched together. The only drawback for this solution, actually, innovation is growing not exponentially but faster. It's growing combinatorically. And that's even faster than exponential. If you put things together like this, it's not exponential growth, it's really combination. And so the time between, we had 60 or 80 years from the steam engine to electricity. The times between basic technologies is growing smaller and smaller to keep up with these jumps. Yeah? On the other hand, the humanity is not growing so fast anymore, at least according to the United Nations. In 2090, we might have peak humanity, and then it might be enough to just grow linearly. But of course, if we have such a difficult problem like finding new innovations in an hour space, in a minute space to keep up with this, of course we need artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence allows us to bend the curve again down. So like we are thinking linearly and we live linearly, and the rest has to be done by the artificial intelligence. It's again a tool that we invented to solve a problem like this. Maybe, Carlos, we are already connected on a small world. I hope we can finish the discussion there.
Definitely. Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you very, very much for your time today, Christoph. I'm sure everyone will agree with me. This has been absolutely amazing, fascinating topics, subjects, and I'm sure many people will reach out to you in the comment section on the events page. So just very briefly, where can people find you? What is your website?
Yeah, it's Christoph.Holz at it's christophholz.com. Or if you type in my name, Christoph Holz, you should find me.
Wonderful. Okay, good. Thank you again. And thank you everybody else for joining us today. And hopefully we will see you in the next webinar. If you would like Christoph to host another one and you have many, many more questions to ask him, please put that in the comments.
Nadine, thank you very, very much for this opportunity. I think digitalization is not a natural force. It's made by humans for humans. And if we do the right decisions, and I hope you don't think this technology is somewhere far, far away and has to be done by specialists. No, everyone can contribute. That's digitalization. All of us can use it to explore our ideas, to help each other. And then I think together we can create a good future, not only for us and for our children and families, but and companies, but for the whole world. I hope so.
Well, it's talks like this that help kind of provoke that kind of thinking and thought process. So it's been a very useful, or at least a really great way to start. Good. Well, thank you, everybody. I think that's it from us. Enjoy your evening or the rest of your day, wherever you are, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, Christoph. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.